All right, Pat, you got all your ducks in a row?
Got them in a row.
All right, let's go.
Okay. Welcome back to Georgia Peach Cast, coming to you from Cherokee County, Georgia. This is Pat.
And this is Greg.
Okay. Beginning with everything that's starting to go on, people have got to start getting active. I know in some cases it's scary. In some cases, just a matter of being burned out. And a lot of people are doing a lot. And it's tough to keep going. I know that specifically some people are starting to say, I've done things 3 days a week, this week, every week, and I've got to start going every other week because I'm just burned out. And I understand that. I truly do understand that. I'm double booking myself too many times, trying to do as much as I can. So I understand that totally. But the point is still important. We still have to get active, stay active. We got another 7 or 8 months it's a long time, a lot of work to be done, and we have to continue to do that no matter what. One of the things that always gets overlooked by a lot of us in the past is that all local elections and state elections never get the kind of activity and voting that they deserve. And we end up where we are today because of the lack of doing that. And we can't do that anymore. We have to include local elections, school boards, cities, counties, state elections, House and Senate. All of those are critical for proceeding, going further, and in this case, in my mind and a lot of other people, what's going to be necessary over the next 9 or 10 years to undo what's already been done. And that undoing is going to have to be done to a great extent at the local level and at the state level. Now the states are starting to work on a lot of that stuff now. There's a whole list of states doing different things to counteract stuff that's coming out of Washington. So it becomes more and more important for the states and the counties and the cities to be active and to keep supporting whatever their beliefs are. And I won't push mine onto anybody else's, but it doesn't matter. If you get active and you start to vote on all of those on local elections. I mean, the history has always said that local elections, even some of the state elections, run between 15 and 20% of the voters that vote. And, my personal opinion, it ought to be a law that you have to vote.
Well, and this is exactly how Republicans got such a stronghold in so many states, is their planners looked at those numbers and they realized, hey, if we can galvanize our base and get them out during the not the major elections but the off election cycles, then we can take over those seats all the way up through the states. And since the states control voting and they also determine who ends up in Congress at the federal level, that was a genius strategy. I mean, you got to give them credit.
I do.
But that's also a strategy that we can use to put things back and move that pendulum back toward the center.
And yeah, and you're absolutely right. And it will be a long time. The Republicans have done a better job of doing that. That along with controlling the narrative as to what they're doing.
And along those lines, we've got two gentlemen that are running as Democrats for Georgia State House seats. One is Jason Tanner, who's running for District 20 seat, and Anthony Aragues, I hope I pronounced his name right, running for a House seat in District 21.
Oh, and interesting, we're talking about the Trump's comments about the gentleman that just died.
Mueller. Robert Mueller.
Yeah,
it was brought depraved, up. Absolutely depraved.
It was brought up, and
Jesus.
Greg and I both know this, and most of the people that we deal with and live with and work with understand this. But that comment that Trump made about Mueller, never got broadcasted on Fox News. They never mentioned that at all. Surprise, surprise.
My God.
So you wonder why people don't,
They are like Russian state media, how they are just willfully hoodwinking their viewers. And, oh my gosh.
And that one is so blatant to say that Mueller, who was a Marine, got wounded, got the Bronze Star, I believe. Okay, and then
dedicated his life to our country,
and then to say that I'm happy he's dead, and still not get reported by Fox News. So, if anybody is listening to this broadcast, and I realize most of it is speaking to the choir, as I always say, but there's a lot of the people that will be listening to have other people who won't be listening to the choir remind them that's the kind of lack of information that they're getting, and they really need to do a better job of finding other sources other than just Fox News.
And this is why it's so important to reach out to your Republican-focused family members and friends and neighbors, and just say, "Hey, I can't believe that a president of the United States would say something like that."
There are Republicans out there, and not Trumpers. There are Republicans, the old Republicans, and some of them have stayed away probably from even voting, thinking that they couldn't do anything, couldn't make any kind of difference. That's wrong.
Yeah.
They can make a difference. The old type Republicans, where there was a way in which to work together and compromise, is what we need to get back to. There's no doubt that there are different opinions on both sides, and pushing for different extents of whatever the subject is or the situation or a law is, and the compromises have gotten this country to be 250 years old, and that's where we need to get back to.
That's the thing. So we need to elect people that are willing to compromise.
So we have to get back to talking now.
And speaking of that,
go.
So one of the main things we want to make sure that you're aware of, because we're all busy and we're not paying attention every second to the political shenanigans that are going on out there. But there is a bill there's a piece of legislation in front of our federal Congress, and they're voting on it. And the piece of legislation is called the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility, or Save America Act. And as with many pieces of Republican legislation, the name sounds great, but the body of it is rotten. And this act is a major change from the federal level to make voting much more difficult by challenging the current system of voter eligibility. In other words, how we register to vote. And so, of course, they're ginning up fear, as usual. It's all about fear with them. Preying on our little fear antennae that are always active, claiming that, there's tons of illegal immigrants and people that shouldn't be voting, non-citizens voting. Well, first of all, that's a flat-out lie.
Right. Okay?
The incidence of non-citizen voting is so low that it's ridiculous. Just to take illegal immigrants as one segment of non-citizens, the ones that they're always pounding on, there's less than a 1 in a million chance that a illegal alien would even try to vote, much less be successful at voting. And the chance of one of them being successful at illegally voting is like 0.00000, like 7 zeros, percent. Okay, like 0.0000001%. It is that low. So this is just ginned up so that they can control who gets to vote.
Right.
Okay. And what did you want to say?
One other point is, if you register to vote, that is not going to be counted.
Yeah,
registering to vote,
we're going to go over that.
You can register. Yep. You can be registered to vote, and they're still going to want these kinds of IDs at the voting booth.
Basically, what they want to do is make huge swaths of our population unable to vote. They will have to prove that they are eligible to vote. Right now, we do that with our nice little driver's license that has the black star on it, right? Our secure ID. Well, guess what? That is no longer going to be eligible to prove that you have vote that you have valid registration
Right.
to
You
vote.
can show your ID,
Okay.
and then
You're
they'll check
only-
it against your registered. And if you're registered to vote, that would normally
You're
be
good
okay.
to go. That's what we've been doing for decades.
Right.
Well, guess what? That doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
What they want to do is require you to, in order to register to vote and to be eligible to vote, you have to have either a passport, of which only half of the American population even has
Right.
a passport. And oh, by the way, that's a huge socioeconomic hurdle because passports are expensive to get, which is why half the country doesn't have one. Plus, they don't go out of the country, so they don't even need it. Okay, and to get your passport takes a good chunk of time and a good chunk of money. The average cost is like $350. There's tons of people can't afford to do that.
And then the other one is your other one is a birth certificate, and the other half of the people don't know where their birth certificate is from.
That's exactly right. You know, when you look at the data that shows the percentage of people, okay, that lack a valid birth certificate, and the thing about your birth certificate is it has to have a official seal on it, okay, an embossed seal. Well, when I went to get my passport, I didn't have one of those. I had the hospital birth certificate that I got in upstate New York at St. Luke's Hospital, and that was just a nurse's and a nurse's signature and my parents' signatures. I had to wait weeks and weeks and pay money to the county that I grew up in upstate New York to get the one that has an embossed seal on it.
Right.
This piece of legislation, just through those two things, is going to disenfranchise millions of voters. Just think if you and your driver's license has to match your birth certificate. Well, that immediately disenfranchises every woman who's gotten married and changed her name. Because chances are that woman does not have one of these birth certificates that has an embossed seal on it. Yeah. Okay? And so this is a direct attack on our ability to vote as Americans. Yeah. They want to put hurdles in front of us to get us to not be able to vote so that they can have a better chance of electing themselves. Right. Okay? And so there's those are two big reasons not to vote or to put pressure on your elected representatives to push against voting for this act. Okay, and we all need to write our congresspeople, and every Republican congressperson, whether they're in your state or not, they deserve to get a message from us as Americans, because this is a piece of federal legislation that will affect everybody in the country if it passes immediately. This is not the way it's supposed to work. States control the voting. Yeah. So this is a direct attack on states' rights.
There's no fraud in our it's been proven over and over again. Our election systems are solid, and
it's actually amazing. And just going back to the 2020 election, which was the most studied and verified election in our history. And the incidence of people illegally trying to vote twice, whatever, was so low that it's statistically it's a non-entity.
It is not.
Okay, but it has happened, and the Republican message machine blows it way out of proportion and claims that it's rampant, and we just need to realize that that's not true.
And the other thing is, you know what they do? The other thing, a lot of the numbers that they quote, okay, are relevant to registration, not voting. There is a higher level of people at registration because they've got to go back and find out sometimes people are being registered or still on the registries that are dead. But that's on registration, not on voting. It's not the same thing. Trying to get registered is one thing, and there's a certain amount of disinformation that has to be looked at and studied before you even get registered. But once you're registered to vote, okay, all of that goes away. And then the proof you need to just vote is that you've already gone through that rigorous
Yeah. Once you're on the voting roll,
yeah,
you don't have to show up at a polling place with all this stuff. You just have your official driver's license, which has the nice little black star on it, right? Your secure ID, and you're good to go. What they want to do is they want to make it our responsibility instead of the responsibility of the states and the local and your county you live in to make sure that you've done the right thing to be eligible to vote. But that's not it, because as is always true with legislation at the federal level, they're trying to stuff other things in that act, that it's not just about voting, okay? For example, they're trying to make it that in there's penalties against election officials if things don't go perfect. And it's like, okay, no, you don't want to be penalizing the people that are doing the hard work unless they're willfully making mistakes. Yeah. Mistakes are going to happen. We're talking about registering millions of people, hundreds of millions of people in a federal election. And so, of course, there's going to be mistakes. They don't need to have the threat of being thrown in jail, okay, for making a mistake, an honest mistake, okay? Second thing is, this bill has wording in it that ends most mail-in voting.
Oh, that's the other thing.
Okay,
yeah.
And it's the thing that's not being talked about. Okay, they want to end mail-in voting because it gets more people able to vote. Once again, the Republicans don't want us to vote because they know they'll lose. Okay, so they put up barriers to voting so that they can't win on policy because their policies suck. Okay, they're against what normal people need, and so.
That voting by mail is being driven obviously by the Republicans, but by Trump specifically. He still wants to be elected in 2020. But the interesting thing is, you know what he just did? He just voted by mail.
Yeah, in the last election.
So anyway,
such a tool.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Please
but
don't.
There's 36 states in the District of Columbia that allow either no excuse mail voting or conduct their elections entirely by mail. One of the things that 2020 proved is we analyzed the election so much in so many different places in our country that it showed that mail-in voting, when it's done right, and it is done right in every single state,
right.
Okay, is incredibly accurate. Okay, and it gets more people to the polls because, let's face it, if we had a national voting day for federal elections where nobody had to work and we could all stand in line and vote, that'd be one thing. But that's not the way we are. So, to get more people to poll, and oh, by the way, Republicans took advantage of this to gain those state House seats that they use to make sure that they have the representation in the federal level. Okay? And so, they've used mail-in voting to their own advantage for decades. And all of a sudden, no, we can't do that because they know if it's allowed, they will lose.
Yep.
Okay, so once again, this is about manipulating elections. Okay? Another thing that's in there is anti-transgender legislation. I wish they would give up on this. Transgender people are less than 1% of the population. They need, this is just crazy to deliberately pick on a small minority of our population, okay? There's ways to deal with no transgender male athletes in sports, okay? We don't need to be legislating against a population in our country. That opens the door for massive discrimination based on any factor that someone like Donald Trump would like to claim.
That's exactly right. It's a slippery slope going the other way.
Exactly.
They've used that slippery slope when it comes to gun registrations, but it also it applies to them using transgender and other minor situations that a slippery slope and put it into law, and then all of a sudden it'll go expanded. So.
Yep.
All
okay.
right.
So just to kind of wrap it up, there's 5 important things to keep in mind. Okay, citizenship is already required to vote. Okay, in order to register for vote, you got to prove your citizenship. So this is a non-starter for that reason. The other thing is that the hurdles they're putting in place are going to make it extremely difficult for vast segments of our population to vote, and especially women who have gotten married and changed their name. Yeah. Okay. Most people don't have a passport, don't have that embossed birth certificate. And since we have a big election coming up, the fact they're passing this now is ridiculous. Right. Just think if all these people tried to redo their registration at the same time. These municipalities are going to be flooded with requests to get this kind of documentation, and it's just not going to happen. Right. So there's a lot of better ways to verify citizenship that put the responsibility on our government, not on voters. Okay, and that's a system we actually already have. As the current system of voter registration requires you to prove that you're a citizen, and so it's already being done, or it's already done if you register to vote.
Bottom line, that's the answer.
And on top of that, it's going to put undue pressure and consequences on election officials. There's wording in this to make their job harder. Well, of course we want voting to be harder because then, the Republicans can get the right people in for themselves. So, they want to make it more difficult and harder for elections to happen so they can claim that they're illegitimate. A lot of this is being put out there to make elections more difficult and more likely to create problems so they can claim that the elections are not legitimate. Okay? Last thing is, could we do better in our elections? Well, of course we can. That's why we have had such dedicated people in our counties that are trained and have worked at doing elections for decades. Okay? Their expertise is essential, and they've proven time and again, especially in 2020, that they can do the job under pressure. But we got to give them room to work.
And down at the lower levels of the people working on elections, so many of them are volunteers.
Yeah.
And they are dedicated to do it absolutely the right way, the best way possible. So, bottom line, don't let that Save the American Act get on the phones, get to your congressmen, get to your senators, let them know that there's no need to waste time, money, and disenfranchise all kinds of people, mainly those who are on the poor side, black and brown, and women. Okay?
Look, even people with money and means are going to have trouble doing this. Like all those women who are middle class or above, and they've all of a sudden got to drop what they're doing and get a passport for crying out loud.
But they're after the big numbers that they know. The big numbers that can't get to doesn't have that information, can't afford to get it, don't have the time to get it. Those are the ones they're after. Don't let them get away with it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so the other thing you can do is protest.
Okay. And we got Saturday coming up. If anybody's listening between now and then, okay. No Kings has got to be as big as possible. Let them know that the American people, we the people, are the government, and therefore we don't need a king, and we don't want a king. We never wanted a king, and we don't want him now.
We don't want any kind. We don't want the king's court either.
Yeah, we don't want an orange king, especially. But any kind of king is not on our radar. We got another 250 years to survive at least.
Yep.
a little bit beyond where I'm going to be around, but so we need to get out there, let them know we're out there, let them know how we feel, and keep it going. Once
get out to your
Saturday's
nearest...
a big number, everybody together.
Yep.
But then beyond that, there's a lot of us that are doing it on a weekly basis, and do anything you can. Keep doing something. Anything at all, but whatever you do, stay active, stay involved.
And talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your family, and let's turn this ship around.
Right.
So,
all right.
Y'all stay safe out there.
Have a good week.
And we'll be jawing at you next week as well.